Autumn is a very short season in Norway. It's definitely too short for all the projects around the farm, the mushrooms to pick and the fish to catch. Soon this land will be covered by a thick layer of snow for 6 very long months, and life will be much slower.
For those of you that are new to our small place in mid-Norway, my name is Till, and that's Thea, my girlfriend. About a year ago, we bought a small farm in the countryside with the aim of a less dependent and more physical life, with most of our time spent outdoors. There's much work to be done with the farm to get to that point, but that doesn't mean you can't enjoy at least a somewhat simpler life surrounded by nature from the very beginning.
We've only been gone for 3 weeks of vacation, and coming back to the farm, pretty much everything's overgrown. The warmer periods that we have here in July, with quite some rain, are very effective in making plants grow.
No pots anymore. Fireweed is pretty quick with this. There are always a few snacks in between the nettles. The raspberries are growing very well this year. Warm spring, moist summer, perfect conditions.
Whenever we return from northern Norway, it's always a challenge to get back into a routine at the farm. Starting with scything and composting has proven quite helpful to at least get back an overview of the property that had been devoured by grass and weeds. The raised beds had also fully gotten out of control, with fireweed and grass creeping in from all sides. So we really had to stretch our cardboard reserves to create a bit of a buffer zone.
few roots here.
Back when we were on the search for a farm, we mainly looked for a place with a decent amount of land, direct access to the forest and hills, as well as a lake or fjord close by. While the 5 acres that we ended up with are much less than we aimed for, the farm has forest access right across the field, and the lake is a 3-minute walk away. A perfect place for fishing and foraging.
Wonderful atmosphere in the forest now. Everything is still very warm and green, but you can already see the first signs of the autumn to come. Doesn't take long from August on here in Norway. Maybe 1 more month and things are yellow. Now I'm going to have a look if I can find some early cantarell. It wasn't really that wet this year, so I'm not really sure if anything has started to grow. You see, this is what cantarell do not particularly like. The first few centimeters of the soil are still very dry. Very unlikely to find anything here. Absolutely nothing in the river either. Not even a little bit. I actually found something down here in the creek, which is very surprising. Looks like a very good porcini. Let's see if it has worms. What a great mushroom. Go. Ukes, hop. Good boy. The lingonberries are just starting to get red. This will at least take 1 or 2 weeks more. Most of the blueberries in comparison are picked by the birds. So I have only these individuals left, which doesn't really make it worth picking. It's more like a on-the-go snack now. Because getting a kilo from these little blueberries on this bush will take you forever.
If there's a bad blueberry harvest in the forest, we can at least count on the 2 productive red currant bushes in the garden. By taking fresh cuttings from them each spring and having some in the nursery at all times, the plan is to cover this whole side of the garden with berry bushes in the coming years.
This berry picker is more regularly used for blueberries and lingonberries in Norway, but I think it does a tremendous job at the red currant as well.
Once done with the red currant and raspberries, we had the first 8 kilos of berries in the freezer. But it turned out not to be the last great berry harvest around the farm this year.
The lingonberries are at their peak now, all in a lightning red color. So we're trying to cover as much ground as possible today and at least bring a few kilos home. You can easily see that they're ripe when they're reaching these dark red colors and do not have any white spots anymore. These guys are perfect. You see the largest one? That's the perfect lingonberry. Don't worry about the one or other white one. You can still sort them out later. Here's a good example of what you do want and what you don't want. Lingonberries are quite characteristic with their thick leaves, nearly looking a bit like a succulent. And these guys here, of which I do not know the exact name, have actually very thin leaves. The berries are also quite different. You see here we have white inside and rather large berries, but earlier in the season they're a bit harder to take apart. So just go for the leaves and make sure you're getting the right ones. If you're looking for the perfect lingonberry spot, you can basically find them all over the mountains and also in the forest here. But the best spots are normally where there has been timber harvest. So these trees were cut down 2-3 years ago, maybe a little bit longer, and now the berries have taken over as the light is reaching the forest floor, and there are so much more berries here than higher up in the mountains. The sweet chestnuts in here have been doing much better than the ones that I've planted outside in the raised beds. They are at least double the size, and soon going into the basement for the winter. Overall, the tomatoes weren't ripening all too well in the west-facing greenhouse, but we were still happy with the first growing results. It always takes time to get to know the land, but each year will bring new insights. And just after the harvest had started, it was time to hold the first summer camp in the mountains. While we were busy fishing, hiking and searching for reindeer, summer slowly started to fade from the landscape. days are significantly colder than they were in August, we still do have some of those beautiful colors left. It has been raining a lot lately, but every now and then you get a day like this. We were also finally ready to plant the red currant seedlings that we grew from cuttings from last winter. Now they found a place right around the other bushes that are already existing, and in a few years this should be a pretty good field of it. The same goes for the apple trees. These 12 guys here are now 2.5 years old. They are about, I'd say, maybe shortly over a meter, more or less. Some of them are a bit smaller, right next to our raspberries. And we got in some smaller guys today, another 12 that are in here now, waiting to grow as well before we move them over onto the field. I think they will still need 3-4 years here. There's basically no sound here today apart from birds. The wind is not existent. No cars so far. Nobody working on anything.
On that particular day, it unfortunately had to be me who was disturbing the silence. During the summer, we only cut pathways into our lawn in order to give pollinators the largest possible amount of flowers. That means that once a year we have to cut rather high grass. And although it is very much possible with this scythe, you save yourself a lot of time using a beam mower. I wasn't the only one in the grass cutting business that day. The neighbor went for it on a slightly larger scale and did the last cut of the year in what should turn out the only dry week of September. It was also the perfect timing to create some pathways around the newly planted mountain ash and spruce hedgerow before the field should turn into a swamp.
We're going to use the grass cuttings as a mulch between the strawberries. There is quite a lot of it, and this one was pretty much seed free, so perfect to use.
As nice as the summer was this year, it brought some unfortunate news for the main house. Our basement has always been a rather moist place, but so far it did not have any dramatic consequences. Well, until we discovered a rather aggressive fungi infection causing dry rot in some of the door frames. It turned out that the rainwater drainage of the roof wasn't leading anywhere but into the soil along the foundation. The old clay pipes that were down there had given up many years ago, which meant that we had to deal with the rather unpleasant task of digging up those pipes and redoing the whole drainage along the front wall. I have to say it is rather easy to get consumed by those issues when winter is just around the corner.
That's our new dinner pan.
We at least tried our best to not let that keep us from enjoying the few beautiful weeks of fall ahead.
We're out for some cantarell today. Those old spruce forests here are a perfect habitat, especially if the ground is covered by moss. If you look around and you see anything yellow, it's either a leaf or a cantarell. And if you find one, you will normally find many. I know it isn't super easy to see, but maybe in this frame you can already make out the first one. Well, this is how they look like. Yellowish color, the drier the brighter, with gills under it. And if you do smell on it, it smells a little bit sweet, like apricot. You see, they do like to hide under the moss. Sometimes you need to look a little closer. It's not much left of the blueberry bushes. Autumn is really creeping in fast. You gotta clean them a little from all the pine needles and moss, but they make for great dinners. This porcini has definitely seen better days. You see the stem is very much eaten up. They have a tendency to just pop out of the ground, grow very fast, and have worms as fast as they grow. All these holes are wormholes, and those are a bit too many for my taste. The whole forest floor all over here is filled with cantarell. Absolutely amazing. You don't need to go to the store for mushrooms in Norway, in autumn at least. And while mushroom searching, I can spend even more time with this guy outside in the forest. Doesn't get much better than this.
Somewhere in our recent history, we exchanged hunting, gathering and farming for a space in larger societies, where specialized jobs bring income and survival. While the survival part worked out stunningly well, losing the variety of existential tasks that were part of being human seems to have left a void for many. That can be changed though. You don't have to be full on and buy yourself a farm in the countryside, but bringing some of those activities back into your life is surely a wise choice to make.
Bit of a lingonberry snack, just to not get too tired from the picking. Perfect condition. Now we actually got some much better looking porcini, even though this guy here definitely has seen slightly better days. This one here, we can have a look. This is not looking all too good. Bit better here maybe. A little better. Not so much better, but I think the top we might be able to take home. Well, you see once more quite some worms in here, but still much better than the other. I think we got a few now. Maybe a bit over 10 kilos. Let's see that we're getting at least one of those guys into the backpack. Never tell your neighbors where you've been, what you've been doing. Secret spots. We're having 4 nets with us today. Should be more than enough for the fish that we need. I guess about 5-6 kilos should be a good outcome. Now that the net is overboard, we're slowly making our way out in the lake. Just using one oar at a time. A little bit more easy to coordinate. then piece by piece, we're just giving more net out. Just make sure that's not tangling up. And you're good to go. Tension is there. Out with the buoy.
Autumn in Norwegian is called høst. The name for this season derives from the word innhøsting, which directly translates into harvest. It originated from the fact that the harvest of fruit, vegetables and grains, which were traditionally to be stored for the winter, starts in September. But it doesn't stop there. The word also extends into fishing and hunting, of which much takes place in fall as well. Here in Norway, both of these activities are seen as harvesting from nature.
A net fully without fish. Not really what I'm used to. Yukes, you need to calm down. Getting a bit better now. I really think the other nets were too high in the water. You're not getting it yet. You get some home.
We still got lucky that day and ended up with a decent catch in the later nets. Enough to supply that week's self-sufficiency course with a local fish dinner. And to make it even better, the high temperatures of the last weeks made another harvest come early.
Wonderful to have fruit trees in the garden. I'm not a big annual guy, but perennials with decent harvests, every fruit tree, berry bush, nut tree, is something that I really enjoy. And what I also think is much more sustainable in terms of work effort that you're putting in. This and good fish and meat from the region is what makes the countryside so great when it comes to eating. I'm keeping these guys for next year. They should be pretty good seeds if I'm just having them in the basement so that they're somewhat stratified, and then getting them out in the spring.
the 13th of September today. Pretty early in the year still. But we had our first night of freezing. Waking up at 7:30 now. The temperature is still 2.9 degrees. There's a little sea fog on the farm, making it much colder than normal. Right? With autumn speeding up significantly, there are quite a few projects that need to be taken care of before the ground freezes and gets covered by snow. The transition into winter is a very short one here, and you need to be ready at any time.
It looks like I'm having to dig another hole down to the drainage pipe. Neighbor offered to bring a stronger machine to flush it, and if we can actually get it open from there down to the field, it would save a lot more digging and also quite some money in pipes. I'm just a bit tired of digging by hand.
At this point of working on our drainage, we still had a tiny bit of hope left to flush open the existing pipes and get around digging up the whole foundation. But after seeing that the plastic cover was installed the wrong way and that the existing clay pipes led into nowhere, there wasn't really a choice but to redo the whole thing.
This is about how far we are now with filling up the silos with larger rocks, before then having a layer of smaller gravel, maybe sand, to fill up some gaps and get 10 centimeters of concrete on top, so that this whole area will have even flooring and can be used for a gym. Getting in some windows over there and a door to the compost area. And the whole thing should be much brighter in here.
But before the finer gravel was even a possibility, we needed to get the rest of those rocks into the barn, and unfortunately it takes rather long to move them in with just a wheelbarrow. The first 3 trailer loads took about 20 hours of labor, and we had 1 load left at this point. Even though we planned to keep the fruits on the trees as long as possible, things needed picking up after the early frost. With barely enough apples for 2 cakes on our only damaged tree, it didn't take all too long. Plums, on the other hand, we had plenty of, and in the coming years our seedlings should be ready for the orchard on the field. I have the hope that our harvest will look much different then.
Tried going in the holes right there. Oh, now I remember where I put the 4th anchor.
Why did you leave it?
Because it was too heavy to carry back.
Yeah, okay. Too smart of us, but
Yeah, it's very smart, but then forgetful. Stay there. Ooh, it gets deep. I think I need to.
stay.
Hearing desperation.
Mm-hmm. It's pretty bored already.
Absolutely beautiful morning. There's no wind on the lake today, which makes using the canoe much easier. Also, gives you the option to actually hear the birds that are still active.
The geese are unfortunately starting to leave, which is never a good sign. As much as you enjoy that they arrive here in spring, you start to get a weird feeling when they leave in autumn, because winter is just around the corner. What a weather.
Here we go. First buoy.
When you spend a lot of time working on just a few projects around the farm, the sheer amount of tasks can sometimes get overwhelming. You start thinking that you have to work around the clock to tick at least a few things off the list, all the while your mental capacity gets lower and lower. These afternoons on the lake or in the mountains are the very best thing to get out of the rut and free up some space in your mind.
Once upon a time, this wasn't only nettles. Last winter, we've put down 2 layers of cardboard with aged manure on top. Obviously not enough to keep the nettles out. At all. So I'm gonna go through with the siphon and see if we can still find anything down here.
I mean, you can pretty much eat every part of the nettle. And the seeds are kinda nice if you have some sort of muesli or oats just sprinkled on top. They're a bit spicy, but matches quite well. But at one point, this is just a bit too many nettles. Absolutely no use for this in that large amounts, except for fertilizer and compost.
It looks like the nettles eradicated straight out everything. Can't see any potatoes here anymore. That makes it at least a little bit easier to go through the whole field with the scythe without worrying. The only thing that actually could fight the nettles were the Jerusalem artichokes. So they are going to find their favorite home here.
Actually, a potato is still left here. Let's see if we find some under this. Tremendous amount of roots from 1 year. We do have potatoes under here. More seed potatoes for next year, but actual potatoes. Some bigger ones as well. You paw. You're making this really complicated.
While the experimental bed had been covered with nettles, other areas of the garden produced much better results. We established this bed during spring by filling the old barn ramp to the manure cellar. And despite its rather shady location, Jerusalem artichokes, potatoes, beets and rhubarb still managed to compete with the weeds.
The beets have been doing rather well.
you can actually eat everything of this plant. I do prefer the leaves, I must say. Kind of nice beetroot taste, but cabbage consistency. Also very much like the root, but the leaves have something special. Not something that particularly screams self-sufficiency. But I mean, it's our first year with growing anything here, and I'm not too disappointed from the 4 square meters that we had there. Just when you start extrapolating how much you would actually need to produce 100 kilos per year, and how many work hours you put into this, it's getting a bit sketchy. The ratio from seed to fruit is a bit better with the beetroots.
This is not what I needed today.
I thought you wanted to go to the gym.
No. Not anytime soon.
This is how the biodiversity pond project begins, with a rental digger. I unfortunately did not have enough time with the broken house drainage to dig the pond fully by hand. So we're gonna do the majority with this one and then do the fine work by hand later. We have it for the next 2 days, and I have absolutely zero experience on how to do this.
Water straight into this. Got myself quite stuck already.
I should have probably started from the other side to dig. I think I'm going to need to ask for help.
Once more, we were lucky to have very helpful neighbors that also were a bit more skilled in driving a digger than I was, so the next day could start without the hurdle of being stuck in the mud. And to my surprise, you get used to operating the digger rather quickly, so things were progressing well. It's slowly starting to take shape. We're at about half the width and half the length of the pond. Digging since about 5 hours. 5 hours more to go today. Maybe 10 more to go tomorrow, and I think I should be able to finish this project with renting the digger only for 2 days. You can see that we first have about a meter of peaty, very wet ground. And then, if you come a bit lower, a layer of clay, which should perfectly hold the water in as long as it is the lowest point in this area. The 2-ton digger is doing very well, I must say. I could have obviously also rented a 5-ton version, but it was a bit more expensive and I felt a bit more comfortable with the first time digging ever to use a smaller one.
We just came about this fantastic looking tree trunk. It seems like the tenants got deep into the wood and gave it this brown golden color. So I'm aiming to save it, draw it up in the barn and use it later for building projects. It's just rather heavy.
I have a feeling that it won't take long until the starling migration starts. They love this place here to rest and feast on their own berries. The pond is already filling up. Hasn't been raining over the night. What a weather. It is 17th of September. We had our first frost and now back to this. The landscape getting a bit more brown golden. Beautiful. Having an agricultural property forces you to learn a lot of skills fast. I must say that steering an excavator is rather different from what I have done in my studies as a nutrition scientist or biologist, and even more different than editing videos in front of the computer. But in contrast to those digital abilities, the physical farm skills aren't outdated that quickly, and will hopefully stay valuable in everyday life for generations. Finishing the pond earlier than expected, I even had time to work a bit on the much less fun project in the yard. Even though redoing the house drainage was far from my favorite activity, it saves you loads of money that you would otherwise have to earn by spending even more time in front of the computer.
Done with the pond for now. At least that one is good to go. The drainage didn't get fully finished. Got a bit farther, but I will need to dig it one more day. Maybe next week. Yuki. Yuki.
The transition from summer to autumn is always a bit of a hectic period on the farm. The days are getting significantly shorter, very fast, and you have to get a lot of things done before the frost really settles in. So since we came back from northern Norway, we haven't really taken any weekends, and you can feel that in your mind and body after a while. Last week, when I was digging the pond, sitting in that excavator for 12 hours a day, I injured my back rather badly, and I'm not capable of doing much physical work now. So that has to rest a little bit, and we took the chance to spend at least the weekend at the cabin.
Regardless of the physical condition, we still aim to set some nets around the island. Arctic chara is spawning in the shallow rocks around October, and it's a particularly good time to catch them. The hunting season had been going on for a while at that point, but I unfortunately got my weapon license and weapon on a very short notice, and there was only 1 week left to take part in the shooting test that you need to do before any big game hunting.
I wouldn't say I was a particularly good shooter in the first trial, so good to get a bit of practice in with just the monocular before I'm having the shooting test next week. It's needed. This good boy actually grew up here at the cabin. So whenever we're back here, he is very relaxed and very eager to hike in the mountains up there. But he's also enjoying boats, so that's helping for the nets. Right, Paposh? Yogs, are you wanting to go for a walk? Or you want to go fish? Jo, Paposh. Oh, good stuff.
You just need to do something fancy.
You're licking your mouth. You like him, and he says like that. He looks so serious or embarrassed.
We're going to set at least 4 of those if I do have enough buoys and anchors. No digging in here. Yeah, we use them later. Fishing has always played a central role in the human connection with nature. With foraging, it's the most accessible activity to feel what it means to find your own food. And it hasn't been long since this was part of everyone's life. Foraging, fishing, hunting, and raising our own food was the essence of being human for most of our history. Without being all too sentimental about it, it feels like we lost a part of our culture and joy in nature the day we chose to do highly specialized desk work.
Now when the slow work starts, paddling backwards and getting the net out with papoose. Okay. That's that construction. Will this ever hold? The adrenaline at least makes me forget my back pain. Snackos.
You should have snacks all the net like that.
Yeah, that would be very nice.
Get him, Snooks. Get him.
Into the sunset.
Nice and calm today.
Some helicopters in the morning. Very nice color. Starts to look a little bit like a salmon in the front.
Tack. Leave. This was quite a lot of fish today, so the first thing that we're going to do is sorting what is going to Yuki and what is going to us.
Nature on its own can offer food in abundance, and I hope those slower, more expensive resources will one day find their way back into our lives. It would at least raise the value perception of the trees and lakes around us, and hopefully it would lead to it being better taken care of. But at first we should probably find a better balance between taking from nature and our efforts to keep the land healthy and productive. Everybody who has ever gutted a decent amount of fish knows it's a rather lengthy process. But it does teach you how much effort there's actually behind the products that you buy in the store, and all that while spending time outside.
This is how it goes into the freezer. No fins and heads anymore, and the eggs are taken out and spared for other meals. There's really nothing going to waste here. The pond is filling up rather well, I would say. This in the corner there should be at least 1.40 meters of water. It is supposed to rain a lot today. I think about 40 millimeters of precipitation. This part should be full soon as well. Are you enjoying the weather, Björni? We're actually having the first flowers of the Jerusalem artichokes. A little bit late. They maybe have 1 or 2 more frost-free weeks left in this year.
Blue sky over there. That's the blue over there.
Wonderful colors.
The back injury stuck around a bit longer than I hoped for. Not being able to move heavy things makes you quickly realize how fundamental physical health is for living in the countryside, and how much the absence of sickness and pain should be appreciated. Especially if you still have a drainage to dig before the beginning of winter. During this period, my body was drawn to cold water to relieve some of the pain and swelling. The hail floating in the river that day definitely made for quite an experience. It turned out that soon after I was able to start with some minor tasks and work on that clouded mind.
For this one here.
Did you break it the first day?
Yeah.
Even though you might not always have the ability to do what you want to, seemingly minor tasks can also have their value. In this case, it was cleaning up the garage for us. The mess after all those projects had been nagging visually for a while and was worth spending time on. It never fails to surprise me how much mental relief comes with keeping your space neat.
already eating.
In October, you're typically in a bit of a rush to close up the last projects. The first snow can arrive anytime, and in a particularly cold period, everything would come to a halt. With the drainage still wide open and the pond looking more like a crater, this year shouldn't be any different, and it was time to speed things up a little. This has been a much more consuming project than I wanted it to be. But now we at least going to do the drainage well. And I hope this will last for at least our lifetime. We dug up some more clay pipes down there as well. And they do drain under the house, which isn't the optimal solution. The next step is fixing up that wall and then attaching or starting to attach the plastic that will keep the water away in future. And today is actually one of those rare nice autumn days. Perfect to span it in a hole. Slowly, and after a bit of puzzling to connect the new pipes to the existing runoff, we were ready to start backfilling soil and gravel. Besides all the nice nature that you're getting by buying a small farm, this is much of the reality of owning a house that was built in the 40s. Things break and have to be fixed. There will always be a roof leaking, a wall to be painted, and pipes to be cleared. As long as you see it as the price for the freedom that you bought and take it one after another, it'll work out just fine. One of our neighbors, Ola, the digger driver, is also going to use this guy to smoothen out the sides of the ponds a little. Then we should be done with that project for this year as well. It's kinda necessary because the water is running a little over the edges of the pond if it's a lot. So the other side that is a bit higher is not filling up fully. It's very nice to be able to clear up things after such a long project. Whenever we have it open in front of the house, my mind is also kind of a mess, and it doesn't go away until the project is done. The pond is looking amazing now. He did a real good job in flattening things out, while still keeping this wall a little higher, so that hopefully this bit over here can fill up one day. It's also the last bit of work with the silos now. Just evening out those rocks, getting gravel on like it's over there, and then I can actually start with putting in some windows. November should be this year's first day of snow. Not much, but some. Normally I have to drag the canoe about 10 meters to the water. Now it's maybe 2 meters left. This is by far the highest I have ever seen this water standing. September and October are typically the months with the highest precipitation in this region. And although it's never a surprise, the number of rainy days can weigh down a bit if you suddenly don't spend time outside anymore. Now, in the beginning of November, the darkness is starting to lower your energy levels, preparing you for the long months ahead. This time may seem depressing at first, but once the snow is covering the trees of the forest and the fire burns inside, winter's magic will lift the spirits back up.